All right, good morning. So I want to start by just saying, please ask questions. I mean, I'm here so that I can hopefully provide some form of guidance and some insight into the research that goes on in my department. The only way I can gauge sort of how I'm portraying stuff to you is if you ask. Start asking questions early. If we don't get through all the slides, that's perfectly fine with me. So, my disclosures. I have a major case of research ADD, and you'll see this as we go through the different areas of research, but I'm gonna concentrate on two main areas. One is exercise and physical activity for health. And that's my adjunct appointment where I actually did my postdoc at Pennington Biomedical Research Center. And the other is nutritional interventions in order to improve hydration, performance, potentially improve health in individuals. So my path, I was asked to sort of talk about my path, and I was a South Dakota Midwest boy. I mean, I came off a horse ranch in the dead center of South Dakota. I went to South Dakota State, did my bachelor's in chemistry with a minor in biology, and was really hopeful to go to medical school. Right? That was from the age of 5 years old when I can first remember I wanted to be a doctor. My mom was a physician's assistant. I loved that career path. I wanted to be a doctor. I thought, go through chemistry, right? Get a minor in biology, and it should be a nice, easy path into medical school. Well, I also ran track and wasn't as focused in undergrad school as I probably should have been. Which I think is sort of telling, because if you're in a path right now where you're not ultra focused, maybe it's not your path. And I look back at my undergrad years now and I go, you know what? I was really interested in chemistry. I was really interested in biology. But my path to medical school, I don't think was there. And I tried twice. I retook the MCATs, never got into medical school. But I also only tried at one school in South Dakota, which I think was a mistake looking back now also. But in the midst of that, I was asked by a classmate, there was a new set of studies going on at South Dakota State in this department or this entity called the F. Lawson Martin Endowed Program in Human Nutrition. It was run by a professor named Bonnie Specker, and they needed somebody to come in and basically do exercise interventions or to sit and read with 3 to 5 year old kids a few hours a week. Right? You don't get into medical school, you're looking for a job, and life sort of throws you the bone, right? Here, maybe this is something that you want to do. So I took it. I was an activity leader in one daycare center. The guy that helped me get into this program went on to medical school. And because of my work in this daycare center, I took over the coordinator position. So now I went from nice, simple, few hours a week job in this activity leader position to a research coordinator in charge of 8 daycare centers, 240 kids in this NIH-driven R01 research grant. Okay? And loved it. How much better is it? You get to walk into a school, you get to work with 3 to 5 year old kids every day. The daycare centers were fantastic to work with. The people there were great to work with. And it sort of directed me off of that med school path and opened my eyes to research. So that was the South Dakota Children's Health Study. And while I was there, Bonnie walked up to me and simply said, we have this other project that I want to run. I want to look at the impact of jumping on individuals' bone mass. So we got about 56 kids together. We had them jump off of a box, 25 times a day, 5 days a week for 12 weeks. And at the end of the study, she gave me JUMP, which is a statistical analysis program, and she gave me the data and said, go to it. Figure out how to use the stats, how to learn the stats. Here's a statistical book, right? I've taken stats in undergrad, but undergrad stats wasn't understood, at least I didn't understand it until I actually had to use it. And here you go, here's your data. Let's publish this research. And that was my first publication. And after least for me, you get that first publication, you get that taste of what it's like to take a project from start to finish, to publish research in a decent journal, and sort of start to carve out a little bit of a name for yourself in this field that you didn't know anything about when you started in college. And after that, I was sold. One of the guys that was on the South Dakota Children's Health Study was Matt Vukovich, who was an exercise physiologist that was sort of overseeing the exercise part of this kid study. And I walked in, I took his graduate level exercise physiology class and went, that's it. That's what I want to do, right? I want to do, it had the right mix of biochemistry, which I love biochemistry. It had the right mix of physiology, had the right mix of being able to work with people. I mean, that was really what drew me to the medical field. Had the right mix of working with people to try and improve people's health. So he did his master's with a guy named Rick Sharp at Iowa State, and he said, I'll bet I can get you a position at Iowa State as a grad assistant. And he did. Okay, I went to Iowa State, started in the master's program, started looking at different resistant or modified starches and how they can influence your blood sugar and blood insulin levels during rest, how those could actually maybe improve exercise performance if they gave you a longer glucose delivery to the blood. And then we got money from Campbell Soup. And he walked up and he just said, do you want to do your Ph.D.? You've been here a year and a half. Do you want to do your Ph.D. with me and finish out your degree? And he said, I have this extra money. And we changed directions and we went into hydration. So we really started to look at the influence of pre-exercise feedings, and I'll show you some of the research. Pre-exercise feedings of sodium-containing beverages and its influence on hydration status during exercise. So up to this point, in graduate school, I took 130 credit hours, very biology, biochemistry, physiology driven. I was in the lab all the time. I love being in the lab. And then got a postdoctoral fellowship with Tim Church here at Pennington. And I'm not sure if you guys know who Tim Church is or what he does, but he does big clinical exercise studies. The first time I met him, he said, so do you know what I do? And I just said, well, I've done some looking online, and you do exercise and immunology, you do exercise, and he goes, nah. He goes, I do exercise and fill in the blank. Exercise interventions and fill in the blank. And after being with the guy for 8 years, he does exercise and fill in the blank, right? But it was a completely different experience. I spent 2 years doing nothing but working at interventions, working with the people on the treadmills, in the weight rooms, collecting data, and it's a humbling experience, and it's something that I've had fantastic. My 3 mentors have been fantastic in this. Is letting me make my mistakes, but at the same time, sort of guiding you and allowing you to sort of choose a path that you're comfortable with and helping you get to that path. So 2 years I spent in the actual interventions. I kept asking them, everybody at Pennington's telling me I'm nothing but a coordinator. Like, you need to learn this. I said, okay, another 6 months. People are calling me a coordinator. I have a Ph.D. Why am I down here? It says, you need to learn this. And eventually I just sort of trusted him. I trusted what he had told me. And now when he has exercise trials that he wants to do, people at University of South Carolina, he sort of farms me out. And I look back now and I see that training that he was getting me. I see that nurturing, that mentoring that he was giving me, trying to get me to go to, now he has people that he can put on these other studies that he trusts, that he knows are going to do good data collection. Okay, so that was my path. And then this job at LSU opened. And I had what I see as the optimum opportunity to do 2 things: to maintain an adjunct position at Pennington and help with these big clinical exercise trials, and to try and start my own lab. And that's where the research ADD comes in. And I'll show you some of the stuff that we're doing at LSU as we go through this. All right, so the mission. Our mission is always to promote disease prevention, health, and wellness through exercise and health-based clinical research. And you can see the different areas that we go through, and I love this cartoon. I think it speaks a lot. What fits your busy schedule better, exercising for an hour a day or being dead for 24 hours a day? I'm sure you guys have all seen these CDC maps for disease. The ones that I focus on a lot, obesity, which is a major epidemic right now in our country. And you can see this is when I graduated high school, not to age myself, but I graduated high school in 1994. And you can see the map, you can see the percentages of those that are claiming to be obese on this map. This is 15 years later, 2009. Look at how the colors change. That's 15 years. Do you guys know when McDonald's came into our picture? 1950s, 1960s. You can't tell me that McDonald's is the root cause of all this, right? And then if you look, these maps, you have this shade. Here's the people were simply asked, has your doctor told you have diabetes? Okay, very few people that claim to have diabetes in 94. And look how the maps just sort of track each other. Increased rates of obesity, increased rates of diabetes. Where's physical activity in this? This is leisure time, physical inactivity. And this is county by county now. Look at the states, or look at the counties. Here's the counties with obesity, claiming that they have a BMI over 30, diabetes incident, physical activity. You can't tell me that there's not some sort of interaction between how much physical inactivity we have, or low levels of physical activity we have, obesity, and the rates of diabetes. Now, why is diabetes so important? Anybody know what diabetes costs our country per year? Direct and indirect costs about $250 billion a year. It's a huge impact on our society and our medical personnel. So what kind of activities should you do? I want to just break down the guidelines because I think that they're important, but I want to sort of set the stage for the next few slides as I go through them. So number one, the guidelines say do something, right? Get off your can and do something. Some physical activity is better than nothing. If you do more, you're going to get more benefits. You should do about 150 minutes a week of moderate or 75 minutes a week of vigorous or a combination thereof that gives you a certain amount of what they call MET minutes per week. Okay. Do you guys understand what moderate exercise is? Yeah, you do it by your heart rate, right? But let's go to something more tangible. How fast do you have to walk or run to be at a moderate intensity? First of all, is it walking or running? Walking. What speed do you need to be at to be moderate? Any type of walking that you can do, that's over 3 miles an hour. It's not much, is it? 3 miles an hour, that's your normal walking pace from building to building. Vigorous. What's vigorous exercise? Running. What speed? Is this HIIT training, that high intensity interval training? No. Is this CrossFit? Absolutely not. They want you to think so, and not because that they're bad or they're trying to fool you. But everybody has this vision now of vigorous exercise being CrossFit, right? Or being this high-intensity interval training. That's maximal exercise. Vigorous training, running at 5 miles an hour, is vigorous. Okay? So now you're talking about that many minutes per week. Divide that by 3. That's like 20 minutes of running at 5 miles an hour. It's not that bad, is it, to get guidelines, to hit the guidelines. If you do more, and I'll show you this in a little bit, you get better benefits for your health. And now they've put in this, and I love this muscle strengthening activity. This does not mean you need to lift to bulk up. This is toning exercise, 8 to 12 repetitions, 2 sets per muscle group, major muscle groups, arms, legs, abs, back, so on. At least 2 times a day, for each muscle group. Or 2 times a week, sorry. So where's some of the data? Sedentary behavior is bad. This is a recent study that was published that shows the hazard ratios. Do you guys know what a hazard ratio is? As simply as I can put it, a hazard ratio is the likelihood of something happening to you that's hazardous compared to a reference. So in this case, being sedentary is the hazard, right? Being active is the reference group. So when you look at these, the hazard ratio that's above 1, this is the reference line. Hazard ratio above 1 means it's bad for you. The farther above 1 that you get, the worse it is for you. Okay, sedentary behavior is bad. Look at this. All-cause mortality. Cardiovascular, specifically only cardiovascular disease mortality. This is strokes, heart attacks, okay, peripheral artery disease, so on. Cancer. Look at the link with cancer. And this keeps popping up in the research. Being physically active reduces your risk of having cancers. Not just any specific cancer, cancer mortality, right? I like this one. The maps I showed you, the incidence of having diabetes, 2-fold greater. If you're sedentary lifestyle, if you have a sedentary lifestyle, you have a 2-fold greater chance of having diabetes. Specifically, typically type 2 diabetes. So this is a 1956 study. Okay, this is in, it's not Brazil, Bengali workers. Might be a little bit different than us, right? But these are workers in Bengal. Look across the x-axis. X-axis is sedentary behavior, light work, medium work, heavy work, very heavy work. So this is increasing physical activities in your jobs. This one is body weight. Look at the body weight. Increase in physical activity in your jobs. Now, these guys are working hard, right? And you see this decrease in body weight, and it sort of normalizes at a normal body weight. If that data isn't enough, these are Bengali workers. They tracked everything that these guys ate. Okay? So this is energy intake on a daily basis. So I want to start with this normal activity range from here up. Their body weights are normalized or are steady because as they increase their physical activities in their jobs and they have free access to food, they increase their eating, don't they? They increase their energy intake, but it balances itself, right? Body weight is really a representation of how much energy is coming in and how much energy is going out. Too much energy coming in, you gain weight. Too much energy going out, you lose weight. So they're able to match in this activity zone above a certain level. They're able to match their energy output with their energy intake. What does this tell you? What happens when you're sedentary? It's bad, right? Your body is unable to match. Somehow, this is where Dr. Stevens and her research is starting to go, right? How does your body match it? When you're sedentary, you lose this connection. You lose this way of matching how much you're actually expending and how much you're actually eating. And because of that, your body weight goes up. Now, this is 1956. I have collaborators at University of South Carolina that are redoing this study in our society using better methods, using physical activity trackers, all the different accelerometers, doubly labeled water techniques to look at energy output, doing all these crazy measurements. And guess what they found? This. This still exists in our society, despite the differences between Bengali workers and the United States. So another reason we need exercise. We lose our fitness. As you age, after about the age of 20 to 25, your fitness goes down. This is cardiorespiratory fitness. The way we measure this is I put you on a bike or on a treadmill, and I increase how hard you're working on the bike or treadmill until you can no longer go. As you age, the time it takes for you to fatigue in that protocol decreases. But look at the curve shape. not linear, is it? It's not like every year you lose a certain percent and it just continues to go down. As you get older, it goes, doesn't it? It takes a nosedive. Okay. And that's in both men and women. And why is cardiorespiratory fitness important? So this shows the relationship between cardiorespiratory fitness and cardiovascular disease death. Okay, the individuals with low cardiorespiratory fitness have a much greater risk or greater occurrence of cardiovascular death over about 10-year period than those that are in the moderate and the high fitness categories. Now look at the shape of the curve. Okay, look at the low group here, especially in the men, versus the moderate group. Do you have to be super fit marathon runner? No. You just need to be in this category, right? You just need to be in the moderate category or better. And with increasing fitness, there's sort of a diminished returns. You can work harder and harder and try to get your fitness levels higher. But the big thing is just to get out of this low category, right? So this is where Tim Church's studies start. Okay, this was done at Cooper Institute in Dallas. They took 464 women and put them through a big exercise trial, a 6-month exercise trial. It was simply aerobic exercise, which means they made them walk on a treadmill or ride on a bike. And they asked this question: can you stop this decline? And if you can stop this decline, how much exercise, aerobic exercise, does it take? So they had 4 groups. They had a control group. This is your group that does nothing, right? This is the one that you just ask them, you're in this 6-month study. I don't want you to change your lifestyle over the next 6 months, which I'll show you why it's bad later. They had one group that did about 150 minutes, right, which is our moderate exercise recommendations, one that did about half of that, and one that did about 150% of that. You can't get a more perfect dose response. Number 1, these are postmenopausal women. Look at the control group. That's in 6 months. Everybody used to say you lose 1% to 1.5% to 2% of your fitness per year. Extrapolate that out to a year. Postmenopausal women are losing about 3.5% per year, aren't they? If you do something, this is guidelines, right? Remember when I went through the guidelines with you? If you do something, you have health benefits. Well, you improve your fitness. You do recommendations, a recommended amount of aerobic exercise, you see further benefits. If you do more, you continue to have additional benefits from physical activity. This is the only true dose study that's ever been done with aerobic exercise on this scale. So the questions: can we stop this decline? Absolutely. Can we reverse it? Absolutely. Do we know what the threshold is? Where does this stop? We don't know, right? We don't know. What's the optimal dose of aerobic exercise? We don't know. I mean, this line continues to go up. Then we have Heart D. This was the study that I worked on when I first got to Pennington. This is the health benefits of aerobic and resistance training in individuals with diabetes. And it wanted to look at control group, basically did 1 week or 1 time a week of light stretching and yoga. Aerobic training, okay, this is a normal dose of exercise for aerobic training. A normal resistance training program like what you guys may be involved with. 3 days a week, 21 different sets of exercise, and then the combined training. Notice this, we didn't take these 2 groups and just sort of squish them together into one group that took twice as long. We cut back on them on a aerobic exercise. We cut back on them on a resistance exercise. This is a 9-month intervention. I personally trained, and we had about 150 to 200 LSU students that came over and volunteered to help collect the data. Fantastic group of individuals. Okay, 20,000 exercise sessions over this 3-year period. Now, we wanted to see the benefits to hemoglobin A1C. Has anyone heard of hemoglobin A1C? Okay. When you have diabetes, the problem with diabetes is it makes your blood sugar go up, and you can't get your blood sugars back down the way they're supposed to because insulin doesn't work as well as it's supposed to. Okay? There's a non-enzymatic reaction that occurs when you have high blood glucose levels. Glucose, because of the way it's designed, likes to attach to proteins, and it's concentration driven. So if you'll look, average blood sugar levels, in other words, the worse your diabetes is, higher hemoglobin A1C levels. So we wanted to see with this intervention how much we could drop their hemoglobin A1C. The difference is I take a blood sugar value right now, it's a picture of right now, isn't it? Hemoglobin A1Cs are about an average blood sugar over the last 2 to 3 months because of how long it takes to recycle the hemoglobin to make fresh hemoglobin that doesn't have that glucose attached to it. I put this up there just so you can see what it takes to run one of these studies. We started with 2,500 people almost. That's how many people we screened for this study. We whittled it down. We excluded individuals. We did all the baseline testing. We ended up with 262 people in the Heart D study. Okay? There's the breakdown of all the groups. Notice that this stretching relaxation group had 41. The rest were in the 72 to 76 range. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But look at the follow-up rate. 91% of those 262 people came back for follow-up, which is an unbelievable number and a complete pat on the back to the people that ran this study or that helped with this intervention. Look at the breakdown. Total white and African American, almost 50-50. Okay, male, female. This had the best dispersion of individuals that there's been in an exercise trial like this. Normally, they're mostly Caucasian, they're mostly men that are done in these studies. So here's the results. Baseline hemoglobin A1Cs. Just for reference, a normal A1C is below 6.5, at least for non-diabetic. So these had an average of 7.6. They're all high. Look at the control group. Now, we allowed these people to change their diets if they wanted. We saw them monthly and encouraged them to go to their doctors. If their A1C value started to go up, we said, go to your doctor, have them change your meds because you're getting out of control. We want you to have a safe lifestyle. Despite that, this is a normal trend for people who have diabetes in 9 months. In fact, you notice that that number in this group was low. It's because the Data Monitoring Safety Board on the study shut down that arm. They said it's no longer ethical to randomize people to that group because it's dangerous to their health. Okay? The rest of the groups, look at their responses. Decrease in A1C, and then they sort of come back over time. But the combination group of aerobic and resistance training had the biggest change in their hemoglobin A1C and was the most beneficial over 9 months. All right, so what about fitness? We looked at fitness with the Drew study. This is fitness in Heart D. The combined exercise group was the only one that had an increase in their cardiorespiratory fitness measured by VO2, or measured by oxygen use by a metabolic cart. So, sort of a stopping point with that type of stuff. The exercise is good for you. Physical activity is good for you. The reason we need to exercise is because right now in our daily lives, we spend so much time doing other stuff in our jobs and where we're sedentary that we need to focus on exercise as a half hour or an hour part of our lives. We no longer have that normal physical activity level in our lives. Studies at LSU that are ongoing. This is the one that Manjot is working on right now. It's called the MAX study. We're trying to figure out not dose of exercise, but which intensity of exercise is better. Is it better to do exercise at a higher intensity, at a lower intensity? And we're starting to develop some pilot data to look at the influence of those intensities on their oral glucose tolerance or their insulin sensitivity 24 hours later. We are have conducted and are analyzing a study looking at the effectiveness of different programs based on a person's body type to improve their body circumferences, to improve their cardiorespiratory fitness. From what I know, this is the first study that's been done that actually has tried to take a phenotype of somebody and direct an exercise program to that phenotype specifically, as opposed to just saying everybody needs to do aerobic exercise at this level and everybody needs to do aerobic or resistance training at this level. Results are coming soon, hopefully. We're actually putting monitors, these really cool Bluetooth fitness monitors, on guys that do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for a reason. We don't know what their physiologic responses are. It's a very intense, it's a very potentially dangerous activity. We don't know what their heart rates look like. We don't know what this monitor actually has a single lead EKG, so we can look and see what happens if they get kicked in the chest. Does it send their heart into a different response? Okay, we can look at their absolute intensities, and we can look at their actual activity levels during this. And this monitor is really cool. It Bluetooths to a laptop. So we can sit there and we can watch their breathing rates, their activity levels, their heart rate variability in real time on a laptop computer. At Pennington, there's 2 large exercise trials that are ongoing that have just finished. Sorry, not ongoing. They just finished, and we're in sort of the data reduction mode. One, to look at why people don't lose weight when they exercise. You guys have all heard that, right? Everybody says you don't lose weight with exercise, and for the most part, it's true. At higher doses of exercise, you actually lose less body weight, which is against what the recommendations are. Okay? So why? Is it because you overeat when you do more exercise? Is it because you have changes in your resting metabolic rate? Okay? Changes in your normal daily activity. Maybe you do more exercise, and the rest of the time you spend sedentary, and it sort of counterbalances itself. And then the ARTIST study is looking at African American men, which is the hardest demographic to do in a research study. It's the hardest group to recruit. It's the hardest group. But they have some of the worst cardiovascular profiles and diabetes profiles that are out there. So we did a study to look at exercise interventions in African American men in order to improve their health. Very, very successful study. That's a community-based study that's just ending. And to me, the upcoming issue is this. Okay? Despite all these things, the intensity issues, the race issues that come into this is how do we make everybody respond to physical activity? How do we increase everybody's physical activity levels? Okay, or their, not physical activity, but their cardiorespiratory fitness levels. So these are data from Heart-D. Remember I said Heart-D had an improvement in that aerobic and resistance training group for their aerobic fitness. But this is an individual points as you go along here. On average, there was an improvement. What happened to these guys? You guys have all heard that, right? You run, you jog, you walk on the treadmill, you improve your fitness. Nah, 40% of the people didn't respond. 40% did not have an improvement in their cardiorespiratory fitness. Okay? How do we get these guys to improve? Now, I'm not saying that they're not better off than where they would have been if they didn't do the exercise, but how do we get them to improve their fitness? Is it changing the program? Is it basing it on their body type? Is it an intensity issue? Is it a race issue? Are there more African Americans in this group? How do we optimize the program so everybody can see the benefits? I don't even know if I want to get into this. How long have I been talking? Okay, so the other area, my research ADD. I don't want to take up the other speaker's time. The other area that I researched, remember I did my Ph.D. in hydration, is trying to determine optimal beverages to drink or optimal ways to improve hydration during exercise. So what we're developing here at LSU is an environmental physiology group. Okay, we're going to try to find the money to buy a heat chamber so we can actually put people on exercise in the heat. We're going to try to, we have now equipment to do all the really cool measurements to look at core body temperature changes, sweat rate changes, plasma changes, sweat, urine changes, and so on. But in ACSM recommendations, they break it down into 3 pieces. What you should do before exercise in order to improve hydration, what you should do during, and what you should do after. And the issues I have with this is before exercise, they tell you to drink. Drink water, drink lots of water. If you're still peeing yellow colored, drink more water. Maybe you should eat some sort of salt in there to hold on to that water. During exercise, they make these recommendations to have this much fluid per time, maybe you need to put some salt in there, maybe some carbohydrate in there, maybe it'll help you improve performance. And then after exercise, they tell you to drink at least 150% of what you lost during exercise, and if you add sodium to that, you're going to end up retaining that water better. Okay, I'm going to skip that one. But please note, sweat is dilute. When you sweat has less stuff in it than your blood does. So as you sweat and you sweat and you sweat more, the amount of stuff in your blood goes up because the amount of water going out of your blood is higher. That triggers a cascade of events, okay? That triggers a cascade of events in your body that makes you thirsty. And to me, thirst is this fickle creature, right? It's this thing that you're really super thirsty, you take a small drink of water, guess what? You're not thirsty anymore, are you? You've completely overruled all of the signals in your body with one small drink of water or one small drink of a beverage. So to me, the point of trying to optimize hydration is to try and develop something that continually makes you thirsty. What's Gatorade's saying? Gatorade is the thirst quencher, right? Is that good for you? If you shut off that thirst mechanism. So there's a term called voluntary dehydration. It simply means if you're allowed to just drink beverages whenever you want, you're going to continually dehydrate your body. Because you only replace about 70% of the fluid that's lost when you sweat, especially if you exercise in the heat. Okay, so the primary regulator of thirst is plasma osmolality. That's our measure of how much stuff is in your blood. I said, as you sweat, the amount of stuff proportionally to the amount of liquid goes up. Your brain picks that up, and a certain part of the brain tells you that you're thirsty. Okay, it sort of sips the blood and says, we have too much stuff on board, not enough water, we need to drink more. Okay, the problem is thirst can be overridden. You take a drink of water or take a drink of fluid. When you swallow, it sends signals back to your brain that says you've just had some sort of fluid, and it dampens that thirst response. As your stomach stretches with fluid, it also sends a signal back that says we've taken in some fluid. This is before anything happens in the blood. So to me, the way that we alter hydration during exercise is to alter that thirst response, right? So what happens if you feed salty stuff before exercise? So the beverage we used was chicken noodle soup. We brought these guys in. We gave them water, one of 3 different trials, water, Gatorade, or chicken noodle soup 45 minutes before they did 90 minutes of exercise. And during exercise, we gave them just water for all 3 trials. But we let them drink water whenever they wanted. And we measured every time they took a drink, we measured how much they drank and how much time passed between drinks. So we got drinking behavior. Okay, so these are the data from the study. I'll focus on this black box because these are men and women separated. Okay, the black boxes combine men and women. This is ad libitum, water intake during the 90 minutes of exercise. When you had soup before, okay, this is fluid balance. So this is how much fluid you lost versus how much you brought in. Okay, so fluid balance is close to 0. It means that you haven't lost much fluid or you have a stable body fluid. Look what happens when you drink water before exercise. That's the recommendations, remember, right? Drink water, drink more water, drink some more water if you're still peeing colors. Okay? You drink water before exercise, and your fluid balance is more negative, meaning you're more dehydrated. You drink soup, and you drink more fluids during exercise, you have a better fluid balance. What about during exercise? So this is the study that we just completed at Pennington. Okay, what about during exercise? Is it better to drink water during exercise or to drink Powerade? Or is it better to drink some sort of just flavored beverage? So we had 3 groups. Water during exercise, we gave it to them whenever they wanted. We had Powerade or carbohydrate electrolyte beverage. And the placebo was actually developed by the Powerade people to taste and be exactly like the Powerade beverage, but no electrolytes, no carbohydrates. Okay? Thinking that maybe just the flavoring alone will increase your drinking behavior. Okay? Here's fluid intake, water, the placebo. Look at the difference in fluid intake. And again, promoted greater fluid balance during exercise. Total work, this is a performance task. So this was beverage intake during 2 hours. After that 2 hours in the heat, we made them do an exercise test to how much work they could do in 30 minutes. Okay, water, placebo, much greater performance or improved performance when you had them drink carbohydrate electrolyte solution. So, the take home from this, do carbohydrates and electrolytes matter in terms of fluid intake during exercise? Absolutely. Do they promote better performance? Absolutely they do. It's the first time that, crazy, right? First time that's ever been shown in research. Okay. Do we know if it's the carbohydrate or the electrolytes that are doing it? We really don't. So what about after? And I like this study because it involves milk. You guys have all heard now chocolate milk is like the best recovery beverage, right? There's actually some data to support this. And this is the first and the only really good study looking at stuff with milk. So they took these individuals and look at this as fluid balance. They dehydrated them by putting them alternating between a sauna exposure to raise their body temperature, exercise for 20 minutes. Sauna exposure, exercise until they lost 2% of their body weight. And then they rehydrated. In fact, they overhydrated them. They gave them 150% of how much sweat they lost during that dehydration period. So here, net fluid balance is positive, isn't it? They overhydrated them to see which one of these beverages made them hold on to this liquid better. Okay, during the next 4-hour period, these 2 are the ones where they rehydrated with milk. These ones are water and carbohydrate electrolyte solution, Gatorade, which is optimal for rehydration after exercise. If you want, let's say you have another bout of exercise right here and you want to be completely rehydrated. Which one's better? The milk, right? This is low-fat, regular milk. So I think there's not just something to have in sodium or the amount of fluids, but I think in the milk, that protein, that extra protein and amino acids in there helps you hold on to that liquid as well. So where's the future at LSU? So we are actively collaborating with Mississippi State to do a study in kids to look at daily and weekly, monthly, and over an entire school year what these kids' hydration profiles look like. So we're going to get kids that are in activities and athletics. We're going to get kids that aren't in athletics. And we're going to look and see what their hydration status looks like. Why? This is where the health thing comes in. It's not healthy for kids to be constantly dehydrated. It may actually change or alter their sleep, which could influence their grades, could influence their behaviors, could influence a lot of different factors, right? Their response to illnesses. Okay? Well, we're going to look at hydration practices in athletics. I'm trying to build some bridges from kinesiology to athletics to help the athletic teams develop protocols to make sure that their athletes are better hydrated. And then these are ongoing studies that we have that are in the pipeline. We're going to look at cardiovascular risk profiles in men and women, African American and Caucasians, and look and see if, looking at baseline tests, you can predict what their cardiovascular profiles are during exercise. And we're going to look and see whether or not cardiovascular disease may actually alter your responses to exercise in the heat. This, I think, has huge implications in Louisiana because we have all these workers that go outside. You know, they're out, blue-collar workers that are working in a hot environment that may have cardiovascular disease. And cardiovascular disease may promote heat storage or in higher body temperatures, because if you have cardiovascular disease, maybe you don't push enough blood to the skin. You don't create enough sweat. Right? So we're going to try and do all these baseline cardiovascular tests and try to see what happens as you exercise these individuals in the heat. And there's my lab. I have some of the greatest students that you can imagine that work with me, and this is a tribute to them. They've really come in and they've changed the face of LSU Kinesiology in the exercise physiology area because of what they do. And if you want to see more about us, we're on Facebook at LSU Exercise Physiology. Sorry I took so long.
I know. I think you're right on time.
Am I?
We got time for a question or two?
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, it's not possible to stay physically active all day, every day. So, are things like standing desks actually effective?
It's a great question. And I've actually done some collaborative stuff with Katrine Tudorlock at Pennington to look at the effectiveness of things like not just standing desks, but they have treadmill desks where you can actually walk on the treadmill and you can type and work on a regular desk. And they're developing a pedal desk where you can sit on a small bike and pedal at your desk while you're working. And I mean, it's sort of in its infancy. In terms of health outcomes, I'm not sure because it's never been done. In terms of raising your energy expenditure, absolutely. We have a study that's going to come out later this year that compared just sitting at your desk working for energy expenditure with pedaling that bike or walking on a treadmill, and it looks like you do have an increase in energy expenditure while you're doing those activities. I mean, it's sort of a proof of concept, right? It's sort of, I call it a duh, right? You're going to see raised energy expenditure. Whether or not that actually is sustainable over time and whether or not that actually is promotes health, maybe weight loss is your health marker, changes in your blood lipids, your fitness values, has yet to be seen. Great question.
Let me give the remote sites an opportunity. Guys in Shreveport and lady. Primate Center. New Orleans. All right.
So I have a question. Sorry. In your studies with your electrolyte drinks, you seem to use the sugared ones, the ones with carbohydrates in them.
Yeah.
My go-to are the 0-calorie ones. They have electrolytes, but then some non-sugared sweetener.
Right.
Have you started to look at those at all? Am I killing myself?
Not yet. And here's the problem with hydration research. They did a whole bunch of studies, early 90s to the late 90s, that were really good. Actually, I would say 70s to the late 90s. Since then, they've just sort of replicated a whole, other than the chocolate milk stuff, which I really like. You know, they've really sort of just replicated over and over again looking at these. I told you the study that we did, it seems like a really easy concept, right? To look at as much water as you want to drink versus a placebo versus power rate. But it's never been done before. To look and just see if it does change your fluid balance, if it does change your hydration, whether it improves performance. So that's what we saw as the first domino to knock down in that line of research. Definitely. Future planned research, if they come back, they want to do more stuff with this, we've already sent them protocols to look at Powerade Zero to see if it is the carbohydrate or the electrolytes. That's a good comparator beverage, right? If you're doing this type of study, to look and distinguish whether the performance and fluid balance changes are carbohydrate and electrolytes, or if it's just the electrolytes. But it seems to work, and I think there's one really small study that was done, and it looks like it's sort of intermediate. But it was with, I think, 6 or 7 people, and it was a fairly small, isolated study. Yeah.
In your, I think it was one of your earlier slides, you had a collection of, you had your control group where you said like it was like a 9-month study.
Yep.
And
Part D.
after, yeah, Part D. So when you saw that like that control group, like the randomized group, was getting like worse and worse,
Yeah.
and I think you said you had to stop at one point. Like what was that time cutoff, and like how do you like how would you tell your participants, oh, your normal lifestyle is like debilitating, and so you need to like do something.
I think this is an emphasized point by Dr. Church and I when we do talks about this stuff, but you don't hear about it much in the media. I think, at least for me, that slide alone is enough to say that people who are diabetic need to exercise. I mean, that is as hard evidence as you can get. So what happened, the Data Monitoring Safety Board, which is this entity of researchers outside of your group that reviews your adherence rates. They review your expenditures. They review your data to make sure that you're not actually hurting somebody, came back and said, you are no longer going to randomize individuals to this group. Now, they let the ones in the group finish, but they said you're no longer able to randomize individuals into that group because it's too risky to their health. I think in terms of health promotion, that's a huge statement. And it says that doing any of those other 3 types is beneficial compared to doing nothing at all. I'm not sure if I answered your question or not.
I think I was kind of like more of like what was the approach to like, so like when you had to like tell participants like
That this was detrimental to them?
Yeah, was there maybe any feedback or?
There wasn't. We did disclose to the participants that were in that group, but as part of that study, and this is one reason I really loved working with Dr. Church. I love working with him because the control group, even though they did nothing for 9 months, were given a month to come back and train with our people to learn how to do the exercise appropriately, to get their exercise prescriptions, to make it past that. I mean, anybody who's started an exercise program know that first month is what's really awful, to get from 0 to where you're on some sort of a maintenance type program. So, I mean, that was what we did with them. We gave all of them access to our trained people to get them from sedentary to active. Now, after that, we had them come back, and I got emails from participants for years about how to maintain their program, how to alter their program. And it's a public service. I mean, to me, that right there is enough evidence that we should no longer have control groups in a study where you're working with type 2 diabetics. To me, it becomes an ethical issue.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How do you find your participants for your studies?
We have an entire department at Pennington that looks for them. And if anybody wants to be a participant in our studies, you can actually go on our Facebook page and you can find the studies that we're doing and be involved. I mean, to me, I did every single study I could at Pennington. I had muscle biopsies taken, fat biopsies taken. I've had needle sticks and procedures done that you can't even imagine. But to me, that was the way to learn, right? I learned how to do these techniques because I was involved with the research. Now, Pennington puts things in articles and papers, and they put, advertisements in papers. They have email blasts that go out to large groups of people. They do all different techniques and marketing.
Yeah, we did the tour to Pennington. Some of y'all went with me over there, and they've got stuff on their website where you can just go and see what studies are currently going that you want to try to sign up for.
So we do flyers on campus because most of the people that we work with are college age or near college age individuals. But in the future, I mean, that's something we're going to have to address too, is how do we recruit for these? If you fail in recruitment, your study's gone, right? And you saw with Heart D, we needed almost 2,500 people to screen just to get our 260 people for the study. It's very difficult. It's the hardest part of research, but be involved. If any of you want to be involved with the studies, go onto our Facebook page and you can see the PowerPoints.
I've already tried some of the recipes from the website.
Have you? Yeah. Fantastic.
Alrighty. Everyone thank him.
Thank you.